Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. And I guess I have to say this. Happy Valentine's Day. Joey's already shaking his head at me.
It's the dad in you.
I had to. I'm not even a big fan of it, but I think everyone's saying it right now. So I'm going to jump on board and say it. But 4-star commitment, Khalil Valentine has committed to Illinois, giving Illinois a headliner, a 4-star prospect. According to the composite rankings, he's a 3-star prospect in the 24/7 sports rankings. And even as a 24/7 sports employee, I will point out that we are the only ones that do not have him as a 4-star prospect. Rivals, On3, ESPN, all have him there. But still, regardless of where he's rated, he is one of the highest rated prospects in the Illinois class. He's the highest in the composite. He is the highest tied for in the 24/7 sports rankings. So a big prospect added to this class. We're going to talk about what he brings. Ryan Easterling, who is in Hawaii, by the way. Am I saying Hawaii?
Hawaii. I don't know. I'm not native. I don't.
But thanks for hopping on, man.
That's great. Great to be on, man. 5 hours behind, but it means you get the news out early in the day here.
That's right. And Joey Wagner joining us, of course, shaking his head at my Valentine's Day. I felt like I had to say it.
I just wish, part of me wishes you had a print newspaper still just to watch all the headlines that you would make.
I do enjoy a good pun. I enjoy a good play on words. So, yeah, I do miss that. Like, that's the one thing, whether you want to buy newspapers or not, like the headline writing, I still appreciate. And the mementos here. But it is a big day for Illinois football to add one of the best prospects in this class. Speedy Khalil Valentine, more than 1,300 yards rushing, about 9 yards per carry, 18 rushing touchdowns, and a good receiver, 22 receptions for almost 400 yards, a couple touchdowns. Ryan, I'll let you break it down. Do you have your film review? But for the people watching, people listening, what do you see in Khalil Valentine on film?
I think the first thing that really stands out is he's just got track speed. He's got a verified 10.8 100-meter dash time. But beyond that, even just the speed is the quickness. You see where he's able to put his foot down, one cut, and just hit the gap and go. And he gets up to top speed really, really quick. And I think that's how you get chunk plays. That's how you get those 10, 15, 20-yard runs that Chase Brown was actually pretty known for his last year. So, you maybe don't get the guy that there's the traditional rough and tumble Brett Bielema running back, but you don't really need that because you've got Caden Fagan, you've got Jordan Anderson, you've got Josh McCray. This is more of the lightning that complements the thunder to pair with Aiden Lawfrey. And so, his speed obviously stands out. He's going to have to get a little bit bigger. He's going to have to put some weight on, which is fine. I mean, I think they understand that. But his speed and his explosiveness is stuff that you really can't teach. And I think those are things that they'll find a way to use early on and in unique ways.
Yeah, and that's what they needed, Joey, in this class was somebody who can be fast in that backfield because they have loaded up on these big bruising backs. And Brett Bielema's had a great history with them, whether you want to go back to John Clay, Monty Ball was a bigger back. But you need some speed. You need some breakaway ability. It's what Chase Brown had, but he had to kind of be everything for Illinois last year. You'd like to get back to this rotation, and I like the future of Fagan, Anderson, McCray. I think McCray, especially this year, could be the lead back. They are very high on what Caden Fagan can do. I loved what I saw from Jordan Anderson, but you need another dynamic that, kind of puts fear in opponents that this guy could break one off at any time if he gets the edge or he gets off on a screen pass. So like Darian Dupree, who they made a priority, I thought they got a great ideal fit in Khalil Valentine. And I thought Thad Ward did a really nice job of, came in, evaluated running backs, and they saw Khalil Valentine and knew that Darian Dupree was kind of leaning towards Wisconsin. Illinois did go hard after Darian Dupree, but didn't land him. But he commits to Wisconsin yesterday, and now you can kind of negate that by landing a guy like Khalil Valentine, who's a very similar prospect, out of state from Arizona, not the in-state kid from the Chicago Catholic League, but this is kind of exactly what they need in that running back room. So along on top of, being able to add that kind of piece to your room, it's a big recruiting win. To beat Utah head-to-head is pretty big too.
Yeah, it's we've talked about it. You mentioned all the big backs they have, and they have Aiden Lawfrey, who is that probably shorter term, like that more immediate, if he can stay healthy, somebody who can help them in that speed department sooner, but health has been a concern for him. We've talked about that at length. You go out and you get a guy like Khalil Valentine. Jeremy, you cannot have like enough fast guys on your team. So, I mean, it sounds so elementary, but like that's just the reality, especially when your other backs are so big. So, yeah, it fits what they need. I know Ryan has his film review. He also looks like he's capable as a pass catcher out of the backfield as well. So, again, that's very, like you said, very similar to Darion Dupree. But I do want to like zoom out a little bit and look at how they walked kind of parallel paths. Like they were still in on Dupree until like the minute that he went to Wisconsin. Like they followed that, but they also did a really good job of keeping Ca'Lil Valentine feeling like a priority and kind of navigated that well. That was a really impressive job by Thad Ward, Brett Bielema, and his coaching staff.
Yeah, Ryan, I want to bring this up is that, they did that and Wisconsin did that with Darion Dupree. Wisconsin had Dylan Jones in for a visit, another 4-star running back out of Maryland. So neither team did that. Illinois knew it was kind of fighting uphill, and it seems like Dupree, Wisconsin has a good sell. I mean, the history of running backs, I know Bielema was a part of that, but the brand of Wisconsin football, plus Fickles had a couple guys get drafted out of the running back backfield, and he loved Madison from what I understood, and that's close to home too. So, but Illinois knew that. They didn't go all in on him. They found another guy in Khalil Valentine, who, to be honest with you, was leaning towards Utah coming into June. And for Illinois to get him on campus, get him here for an official, and from what I heard, guys, it was bottled up pretty well until the final, 24 hours here. Illinois got the commitment on campus. So they were able to sell him. Thad Ward did a heck of a job, and then they're able to close on him when Utah is a heck of a program. I know they're in the Pac-12, but back-to-back Rose Bowls, Kyle Whittingham taking over Urban Meyers basically made Utah the Wisconsin of the West, Ryan. So that's a great recruiting win.
Yeah, and I'd have to go back and look exactly when it was, but Illinois didn't offer him that long ago. It was like late April or maybe early May. So things progressed very quickly with Khalil Valentine, but they had to sell. And I don't think that it was a case where Illinois really wanted to concede on Darion Dupree, and they fought to the bitter end on that one. But it sounds like that Wisconsin just had to sell there. Illinois made a great pitch, they made a great push, but I would say to your point, credit the staff for coming in and just putting the pedal to the metal on getting Khalil Valentine done, because they got a great player there out of an area that they don't traditionally recruit. Now, we look anytime this class, especially, they've got guys from Utah, they've got 2 guys from Nebraska, and now they've got a guy from Arizona who's only like the 6th or 7th letter winner from the state of Arizona in program history. And one of the last being Robert Holcomb from the mid-90s, also a running back. So kind of an interesting dynamic there. But yeah, I mean, to have this position essentially sewn up and have a great complementary piece to some of the bigger backs they already have in the room, I think was a really important recruiting win for them, especially given what happened just yesterday. Yeah.
And Joe, I wonder what you think of just landing a guy with a 4th star in the composite. This has been a good recruiting class, but Illinois has missed on Luke Williams. They missed on Dupree. They missed on Lightfoot. So they haven't been quite able to get that headliner that just changes. And I understand it from a fan's perspective. We get that one guy, like you get a Malik Elsie, you get a Caden Fagan. It kind of changes the way you think about a class, even if we know those 3 stars or the no star in Devin Witherspoon's stance. If you look back at the 2017 class, Kendrick Green was a 4-star, turned out pretty well, but some of those low 3 stars, those late evals turn into great players. But it does change. Like those are bigger recruiting battles. They tend to be. And, Oregon was in on Khalil Valentine. At some point, Miami was in on Khalil Valentine. So I think this is as good of a recruiting win as Vernon Woodward, I would consider in that realm. Easton Baker, I would consider in that realm. Eddie Turk, Tyshawn Griffin. But to have that 4th star, I know some fans were itching for that.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, you want to have that 4th star because like the star rate, you can believe in them or not, but they still exist. And people get excited about that. So Valentine's the 3rd highest rated commit of the Bielema era, behind Malik Elsie, behind Sabor Kareem. Neither of those 2 were committed when the season started a year ago to Illinois. Illinois had 1 4-star at this point a year ago, Caden Fagan, who jumped on very, very early. And he was the first one, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the second. Yeah. So, I mean, there's still a long way to go, right? It's like till signing day. But to get that 4-star, I think people were happy about the class. I think you look at it like there's good football players in this class that Illinois has. But I think if you're just not even just a casual fan, just somebody who likes to I mean, this brings up your recruiting ranking. Who likes to see their team in that with that company, I guess. Like, yeah, it matters. It matters to fans. It matters in terms of perception. Does it always matter on the field? Not always. It does a lot. I mean, stars do matter.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that let's be honest here. But there are development stories. There are stories of 4 stars who don't pan out. But it matters a lot to guys.
I think stars matter a lot when you're getting into 5-star, high 4-star territory, because
Yeah.
you land a bunch of those. You know, Georgia's got 3 5-stars and 15 4-stars. Ohio State has 4 5-stars, 12. Like, that matters when you're stacking that many. I just don't know if the difference between a Turk and a Woodward is all that different from a Valentine. But Valentine is a deserving 4-star prospect. I wrote it my what it means. Like, I think Illinois has landed 4 or 5 guys in this class that, for me, would be 4-star level caliber players. But for me, that's like a top 700 prospect. But I digress. Illinois now the number 37 team in the country in the team recruiting rankings. And when you look at the Big Ten, they're now number 11, but they're the 6th Big Ten West team to get a 4-star. The one without a 4-star is Northwestern, which is dealing with a world of trouble right now. But you get into that realm where I wrote this today, guys. Like, the rest of the West is recruiting incredibly well. Like, they're upping their game. Nebraska under Matt Rule has 5 4-stars. They're a top 25 class. Ryan Walters is doing great work recruiting. I know yes, you got to see what he does as a head coach, but he is recruiting. He's recruiting incredibly well. You have to say that. Wisconsin has 6 4-stars in this class now. Minnesota has 1. Illinois and Minnesota have similar classes right now, but they're elevating their game just like all these other West teams are. And then, Ryan, it comes down to evaluation, it comes down to development, and it comes down to retention to see who emerges among those teams.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of hinted at this, but with the influx of coaches that the West has had this offseason, high tides raise all ships. So if you're not stepping your game up, you're going to sink. And so you're seeing that where Illinois now has to recruit on a higher plane. And fortunately, they had the season they had this past year because I think they gave them a lot of ammo to be able to recruit and at least try to keep up. They will, to Bielema's point, always be a developmental type program, but they're getting on average better talent. And I think that they're able to take that, mold that. You're probably getting less misses or less marginal guys in these classes now. Because if you look back at some of the classes in the past, whether it was Tim Beckman classes, anything Bill Cubitt put together, or Ron Zook classes, there were a lot of boom or bust guys. And I think Bielema has shifted his approach a lot more in that he's taking more guys that are less likely to be complete flameouts. You might have a few guys that are Devo guys, but you're getting an average level of talent that's better than what they've gotten in the past. You're getting less guys who are very high risk players. There's maybe a few here and there, but I think the staff has confidence in their ability to develop those guys and keep up in the arms race for talent in the West.
All right. Ryan, what do you think of this class? 17 commits in this class right now, number 37 in the country. They get a 4-star today. They've landed some top in-state kids, missed on some in-state kids. And as you said, they've gotten into some recruiting territories that they normally do not get into with Nebraska, Utah, Arizona. So just what do you make of it right now?
It's interesting to me because, I was thinking, man, they've done really well in state, but then you look at the numbers and they haven't landed as many in-state guys, but I still don't think that they're necessarily doing poorly in state. I just think that this was kind of a unique class. You got some guys like Cam Williams and Justin Scott who were probably just never coming to Illinois. I mean, they were the first offer for Justin Scott, but I don't know that really was going to change anything. They've done well. They've gotten some guys like an Eddie Turk that they should get. They got Tyshawn Griffin, a guy that they should get. And now you look ahead to 2025, and I mean, they really have an opportunity to do well in state in that class. But not to digress too far from the 2024 class, I think they've addressed a lot of really big needs. You see some of the roster turnover that happened at the DB positions. You see some of the offensive line positions that are moving on, some of the defensive line positions that are going to be moving on after this year, and they needed to backfill those spots. And I think they've done a pretty good job of getting pieces that backfill that. You mentioned him already, but I'm also really high on Vernon Woodward. I think he's a guy that will probably outplay his rating unless he gets a significant bump up, just because he's so good in man coverage and can be that guy on the corner moving forward. You look at a guy like Easton Baker, who has just eye-popping film. They've gotten some guys that I think can be really good players moving forward. And it's just a matter of piecing everything together. But Where I think they really have done well is they've gotten the pieces that fit into the overall scheme of what they're going for as a roster. They've actually done a great job the last 2 or 3 years of really rebuilding this roster and getting pieces that fit and make sense in the big picture of a 4-year, 5-year rolling roster, as opposed to just getting immediate needs and getting plug and play guys that, maybe they're just for a hot second and then leave.
Joey, didn't even have this in my what it means piece, but I'm thinking about it now. This is Thad Ward's first commitment on his comeback to Illinois. Antonio Finellis's first was Vernon Woodward, right? Or one of the first. Like that's a big addition for him. Robbie Disher has added Carson Conkle and Tanner Hollinger, 2 good additions. I think Carson, obviously a really good recruiting win. And then you think of Charlie Bolin winning a Power 5 recruitment for both Lane Jenkins and for Joe Barna. I think it's been a nice impact early on for these 4 new assistants so far.
Yeah, we wondered what that was going to look like because we didn't have a big – I mean, Thad Ward we had for the most part. Oh, yeah, they've gone out. They've won Power 5 commitments. I was looking up while Ryan was talking. I want to add this. The last 2 classes, Illinois had 3 top 500 players each. 3 this year, 3 last year, according to the composite rankings. The first year, that 2022 class, 0. 1 in 21, 2 in 20, 3. Now, we talk about that 19 class because it was Isaiah Williams, and you go down the line. Keith Randolph was criminally underranked, Seth Coleman as well. But they had 3 in that class. So, this is you're starting to stack minimally, but, to get those top 500 guys on board, and to your point, Jeremy, Khalil Valentine, first one for Thad Ward. He's a top 350 kid. First one for Thad Ward back at Illinois. So you wanted to see that, and remember, he got in kind of late in this cycle a little bit. So what's it going to look like when you get into that 25 and beyond? And it's not just running backs. I mean, Thad Ward's a really well-connected guy. You're seeing Antonio Finellis' connections in the state of Florida and that partnership with Aaron Henry. You're seeing those pay off. Robbie Disher, man, I talked to Tanner Hollinger's coach yesterday, and he's raved about the guy. I think he's a really good fit to recruit tight ends because we've talked about his personality a little bit, and I think he just connects really well with people, especially tight ends and maybe kind of some of those smaller town kids. So, yeah, it's the good early returns for the new coaches.
The other thing I was thinking about is, after you have Devin Witherspoon and Sidney Brown and Quan Martin, is it going to be easy just to land all these 4 stars, Ryan? And Ryan Walters certainly is taking advantage of that over at Purdue. But they do get Woodward, who I think is a 4-star level guy. Chase Brown, that helps sell Ca'Lil Valentine. And kind of underrated is the offensive line development here at Illinois, and that Vidarian Lowe, Doug Kramer get drafted, Alex Palczewski and Alex Pilstrom get NFL contracts. They helped turn that into Saphir Stewart and Caleb Pyfrom in this class. And then some of the defensive line, recruiting is elevating now that you've seen Randolph and Newton play really well, and you get somebody like Turk and Demetrius John, Power 5 level defensive linemen coming in. So I don't know if last season all of a sudden, Ryan, means they're going to land all these 4 stars, but it is paying off in recruiting because these are recruitments. These no doubt Power 5 offensive linemen, these no doubt Power 5 defensive linemen, Easton Baker choosing Illinois over Oklahoma, Khalil Valentine choosing Illinois over Utah. It's gradually starting to make a difference.
Yeah, and you haven't really seen them landing stars in the defensive backfield just yet as far as the DBs, but they're getting really good players, and they're getting guys that fit into this defense. I mean, the number of 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" defensive backs they're recruiting is right on brand. I mean, they love these big guys that can play multiple different positions. They're getting the right fits. Where I think they have a huge opportunity, and I already hinted at this a little bit in the last thing I talked about, was 2025 is a absolutely stacked, and I mean stacked, in-state defensive line class, especially on the outsides, but just all across the board. I mean, you've got Chris Burgess, Jalen Williams, Nate Marshall from Fenwick. There's 4 4-star players, including several that have Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State offers. This is the year that if you're going to parlay success of your front 7, you got to do it. And so I think they're going to hang their hat on that this year. On the offensive line, I think that's probably where they've had the most success in turning on-field production and development into actual recruiting results. But I think the next thing is going to be on, the defensive line. I think what might have hurt them was the fact that Walters went to a different school, and that took away some of the sell, because obviously he's able to sell that himself as well. And I think if he was still around, that probably would have really strengthened the sell for DBs at Illinois. But
you might have
it
had
happens.
Jair Hill. Yeah, you might have had Jair
Right.
Hill in class as
Right.
well. And I want to be honest, like, Ryan deserves to be able to have that sell. He was a huge part of why they had so much success.
Yeah, I don't think you can ignore what he did at Illinois and the fact that he should get credit for it. I mean, I know that fans aren't going to like that and they love to hate it, but it's true. And so, but the Illinois still has Terrence Jamison around. They elevated his title this offseason because they feel that he brings a lot of value as a position coach and what he does. And I think if that group really performs the way that everybody thinks they can this year between Newton, Randolph, and the rest of that front seven, especially with adding Charlie Bullen into the mix to develop some of these edge guys, then they've got Gabe Akis coming back, who's a freshman all-conference, all-American type player. That front seven has a chance to really put some footage on the map and be some of that sales material to that front seven class in 2025 that is going to be so critical to land in state.
Yeah, and I just want to add Andy Boo's been a big part of it. Obviously, Aaron Henry had a huge impact on Devin Witherspoon, and obviously Bielema thinks very highly of him. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. Joey, I wanted to bring up with you 17 commitments, not many spots left in this class, I would imagine, for prep prospects with only 9 seniors. Of course, you always have attrition. Some guys will go to the NFL. Some guys will enter the transfer portal after the year. But what else are you looking forward to in this class of 2024 moving forward?
So in terms of like what we're immediately waiting on to see where they commit would be Dalen Platt, Josiah Knight, and then you just get into the fall. I think those are the two. You see what plays out. And I know you got Xavier Lucas still out there in the mix. And D'Amico Kennedy, right? Kennedy? Yeah. We'll see. I mean, but you let those play out and you probably just see what happens in the fall. See if there's any of those late risers. See what you probably, are going to need, whether it be the portal, especially on the defensive line, whether you think there's a junior college market you can tap into going in. But they've addressed a lot of these positions, Jeremy. I mean, you go down the list.
Position, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of one that you would – look, you can't have enough defensive linemen. If you really wanted to complain and say they need to add another one, you could probably point to defensive linemen because you've got a great sell and you can't have enough of them. But otherwise, they've done great. I mean, I think they've addressed every need. I
think they want one more outside. I know they want one more outside linebacker, and Knight could be that guy. I do think they'll be in the market for a defensive lineman, especially now that we know Mason Moragan's playing outside linebacker apparently. And we'll see where Eddie Turk ends up. So if he's a defensive lineman or offensive lineman, but I think another DB and another outside linebacker is kind of what they've planned for. So we'll see what happens with Lucas, Levi, Platt, among those Florida guys and outside linebacker. But then you got a chance to go flipping. You got a chance to, as Ryan said, start on the class of 2025. Done a lot of heavy work here, heavy lifting here, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think that's the case. They have in the past. It seems like at least the last couple of years tried to leave themselves some scholarships for the end of the year to be able to fill those spots. And I mean, I won't be surprised if you have some attrition. It just kind of happens these days in the transfer portal world. But they're going to try and leave themselves at least a little bit of savings in the scholarship account to be able to add some pieces late. And I think that. Depending on whether they find somebody who has a great senior season, is an off-the-radar guy who pops in, they get his film and say, hey, this is the guy we need to go after, whether that's a potential flip for a guy that maybe committed elsewhere, some circumstance changed, and now he's available, or it's just a guy that emerges late, or it's a transfer portal guy. I think they're going to leave themselves at least a little bit of room to be able to add somebody late in the cycle or add a couple people late in the cycle so that they're not completely pigeonholing themselves if somebody comes up.
All right, I want to wrap up here, and I just want to wrap up with the news of the day, which is Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. I never thought I'd enter a media days where Pat Fitzgerald might be on the hottest seat in the Big Ten, but boy, that'll be interesting when Pat Fitzgerald gets to media days, because kudos to the Daily Northwestern, the student journalists there. Obviously, Medill is a very good journalism school, and those students did great work in uncovering some really severe, disturbing allegations about this hazing scandal. Fitzgerald was really given a slap on the wrist with a 2-week suspension. The best that Pat Fitzgerald can look is negligent here, with some of the actions that were happening under his watch for a really, really long time. But I also think this looks really poorly on Northwestern, the administration, because they're really trying to sweep this under the rug. And I think this story by the Daily Northwestern, which is why it's kudos to them, is going to make this a continuing story. I don't think this is done. And I don't know whether it's really threatening to Fitzgerald, but boy, he's got some big questions to answer. And I just wonder how many, if like the media now is going to try and get more answers out of Fitzgerald than Northwestern did. Like, I understand what he's done there, and I understand Northwestern's probably not the only place this has happened, just like we talked about with Illinois and Tim Beckman and all that, but doesn't make it right, doesn't make it that these coaches shouldn't be held accountable for this stuff. So I know it's a dicey subject. We're still learning information, but it's an unfolding situation there, Joey, at Northwestern, with some disturbing allegations from former players.
Yeah, the allegations are bad. Well, media, it feels weird. Like media day, we just talked the other day about how it's only a few weeks away, but like that also feels like kind of a long time when you're talking about a story like this and how things play out. And that's not to say it'll be fixed, but I just think, like, to your point, where you go into media day and like he's going to have a lot of questions from a lot of people. And I'm just wondering what it looks like between now and then, and how much more we learn. And I don't know. It's going to be Pat Fitzgerald's going to be a very very talked about guy from media days.
He's probably the number one story right now, which, I mean, we're talking about with all these new coaches in the Big Ten. Like, Ryan Walters, obviously a really big local story for us in Purdue. And I think nationally he's got some buzz because he's a really compelling story, really compelling personality. You got a new coach at Nebraska. You got a new coach at Wisconsin who's been in the college football playoff. But I know it's a short-term cycle here potentially, but just the fact that he's got to answer these questions. Ryan, I've always respected Pat Fitzgerald and what he's done. I've always kind of, every time I've talked with him, I've really enjoyed my conversations, but this is not a good look for him.
Yeah, I mean, I read the article this morning, and if some of those allegations are true, a 2-week suspension during a pretty inconsequential time seems very, very light from the Northwestern administration. So I don't know if now that more of this detail has come to light, they're going to take another dig into this or what. I mean, it sounds like they were privy to a lot of this detail, which really, if that's the case, as you said, reflects more poorly on the Northwestern administration than it does Pat Fitzgerald. I will be interested to see, Jim Phillips has moved on from Northwestern. He and Pat Fitzgerald were extremely tight when he was the athletic director there. I don't know what's going to happen.
That program's got massive questions now. I mean, yeah. Pat Fitzgerald.
And it's not like they've been doing great either, too. They fell off bad last year.
If Pat Fitzgerald's 10-2, people might deal with this a little bit easier. And Evan said, let's be honest. Like that is what happens. Like if Tim Beckman were coming off back-to-back bowl games, they have been easier on it. We got to put that in there. But he's not. The last 3 or 4 seasons have been terrible, but he is one of the best coaches. I mean, he's the best coach ever at Northwestern. And he's the man there, especially for a new athletic director. The power is, Pat Fitzgerald's a more popular person there. So ever since Jim Phillips left, it has not been going very well there at Northwestern.
Yeah. And we saw how this all played out with Tim Beckman, and it's, things continue to come out as time goes on. And so I'm a little bit concerned about how this is all going to look long term. Are there going to be more allegations? Are there going to be more players that come forward? And I think if that's the case and you see some more players come forward and corroborate some of these allegations, it's going to be problematic for Pat Fitzgerald and for the Northwestern administration trying to keep him around.
Yeah. Anton said, it's a shame that people wouldn't give Pat Fitzgerald the benefit of the doubt. The man has a sterling reputation, has been on the scene for 30 years, but some anonymous allegations can do this. They are anonymous in the newspaper. They are not anonymous to Northwestern. Like these people that talked to the Daily Northwestern talked to Northwestern. And you notice Northwestern came out with a statement today. They did not deny the allegations. They said they hid behind privacy, student privacy, and I somewhat understand that. But they didn't say that these things are untrue. And we have not heard Pat Fitzgerald say those things are untrue. So Pat Fitzgerald has basically said, I didn't know this was happening, which again, maybe he didn't know everything that was happening, but there are some details in the story that are interesting that I think people should read. Go in there. I'm not saying he should be fired. I don't know, but he's got some questions he's got to answer. And with this report, he's got a lot more to answer, Joey, than Northwestern just kind of shoving this under the rug. 2-week suspension while all these coaches are taking vacations anyway.
Yeah, and that was my point from earlier. I probably should have done a better job explaining. Like, I'm just very curious what this looks like in 3 weeks when he's got every media outlet from around the Big Ten and nationally there. Like, do they try to get this? Like, I think there's a lot more further to address. Do you do that ahead of media? Like, that's what I meant earlier by, like, 3 weeks with a news story like this is a really, really long time. And I just wonder what their approach will be, given that, like, he's going to be there and everybody's going to be there. What's that look like? Do you extend the suspension? Do you go with what? That's what I'm most interested by, outside of obviously the fallout from this. Is like, how do they handle this? How do they handle the immediacy of this, and what certainly will be more information that we learn about in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like, I've been a guy that, you know, I've talked with people in the industry. I was like, man, if my kid wanted to play for Pat Fitzgerald, like sterling reputation Anton's talking about, I'd be like, yeah, this makes you question that. Like, that's why this is kind of jarring, because I've always felt Pat Fitzgerald was, maybe I was wrong here, but I always felt like he did it the right way and all these things. And that's why I just think he's got to answer more questions about it, because, again, like, he either knew about it, and that's a huge black eye and that's a huge red flag, or he didn't know what was going on in his program. Like, I don't strike. I mean, Brett Bielema's not that kind of guy, and Pat Fitzgerald's not that kind of guy. And at some point, I would imagine some player coach addressed this or brought it up, or a whisper got back to him about it. Like, that's speculation, but it's like, it's hard to believe, with as meticulous as these guys are, as hands-on as they are, they wouldn't hear anything about it.
Yeah, as integral as Pat Fitzgerald is to that program, I just have a hard time believing that he never had been briefed or had this brought to his attention in some degree. I think what's really going to be problematic for him is if there is a link made to him to where he was actually an active participant or complicit in it, whether he knew it or not. You know, there are a couple details in that article about signaling or identifying players that were dogging it and were kind of tagging them, if you will, for these activities. Whether Fitzgerald knew that that's what was being done as a result or not is hard to determine. And one thing, and I don't know, maybe this is a non-factor, but one thing I think might make this a little bit challenging as far as getting information is that Northwestern is a private institution. They're not a state institution, so it may make getting information a little bit tougher. It may make the dissemination of information a little bit tougher because Northwestern can do more in-house. But I think it's going to behoove them to be very transparent in all this. I think that's what's shown to be, they have to be transparent in this, or else it's going to look like they're trying to cover something up, and it's only going to make it worse.
Yeah, which is what I think is the most concerning, is they've not been very transparent. I understand the privacy involved in all of that, but Fitzgerald and Northwestern have not been transparent in this. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward, and he'll face a lot of questions here coming up. All right, Ryan Easterling, thank you for coming on from Hawaii, man. Give us your insight. Khalil Valentine, Illinois football recruiting. Joey Wagner, thank you as well, boys. Thank you to everybody watching on the YouTube Live. Give us a follow, give us a like on your way out. And if you're listening on the podcast, go give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.